someone for whom there isn't very much affection, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Now, we've been talking about his almighty fall from grace and this new life in exile on the Sandringham estate. But Samara, he hasn't just been holed up at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate, has he? We've learnt that he's jetted off for a nice little break.
Yes, he was using the Middle Eastern money that he kind of calls upon in order to go and stay in one of his friends' places in France. I think it looked very lavish. They were dining, eating Michelin-star meals and enjoying their life. And I think that's exactly what the public doesn't want to hear right now, coming from Andrew's side. You know, we want him to be holed up where he should just sort of go away and get out of the media press. And this is going to be an ongoing, the press. And it's going to be an ongoing issue for the royal family, that he continues to have this affection for the finer things in life, you know? It's going to chase him around.
But also, what is this Middle Eastern money man buying?
Yeah.
You know, people don't spend their money for no reason. Yeah, like, is this really, Andy's bestie? Like, I don't think that this is a really close personal friendship that has motivated this. So what does this Middle Eastern businessman think he's getting? Now, I'm not saying
Andrew doesn't have any capital anymore, though, does he? I mean, what can they expect to get from him? Well,
this is the interesting thing. It could be introductions to people. It could be, we don't know. But this is a man who, so we have the friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, but then we have the other efforts that Andrew was making to offer, government documents around to different business contacts of his, which he kind of openly talked about doing in the Epstein files emails. Then he has his friendship with Tengbo, who denies being a spy, but the British think he is a spy and, expelled him.
China seemed to think he was kind of the useful idiot, the way in.
Yang was, or Andrew was. Andrew was seen as the useful idiot, and it did very much look like he was being groomed by an intelligence agent or asset. And so now all of a sudden he's now besties with a new, very, very rich international businessman.
Do we know if this is a new friendship or is this an existing? I mean, he's had very close relationships and friendships with senior figures in the Middle East, and we know that there have been offers of palaces, for example, and places for him to escape to.
It may be an old contact that he already had. But my point, I suppose, is who would suddenly pop up wanting to give money to such a toxic person out of nowhere? And if Andrew didn't have this history of making these very ill-advised friendships and relationships, I'd be much more willing to just think, oh, well, rich people do entertain royals because it bathes them in some golden light. But I think that Andrew has presented a national security threat to Britain. He has been. And so I think that if I was in MI5, I would want to be taking a look at this friendship and trying to work out what exactly is going on there.
What's interesting is when he was arrested and questioned, he was then released under investigation. So that means he is still free to travel. He didn't have to surrender his passport, did he, Samara? So, he can go. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the optics of this, isn't it, that are problematic. What it looks like if he's lording it up in Brittany with a private chef and lavish chateau that he was being put up in. And also, every time Andrew ends up back on the front pages of the newspapers, it undoes the good work that the royal family are trying to do, because it just reminds us of that bad egg.
Yeah, I think the palace is in a really tricky situation here, though, because they've got obviously pressure from the public not to give Andrew anything. Obviously, he got evicted from his really nice royal lodge. And they also the public wants basically the palace to have him cut off. But then that poses the question, where's he going to get any money from to form any lifestyle? And then you're right, he's kind of open game for anyone who wants to sort of get a friendship with him in exchange for some money or anything like that. So I think they're almost creating their own problem here, but they've got a very tricky thing to balance, because they're not going to support him. But if they don't, he's going to run off to his friends in the Middle East and try and get support from there.
Now, the timing of this visit is intriguing as well, because we had this photograph, didn't we, of Andrew with this very bruised face, this big black eye. And it appears that was just 72 hours after he returned from his trip to France. Could something have happened?
It's a hypothetical possibility. I mean, our information is that, oh, nothing to see here. It's all just a kind of a non-serious medical issue, basically, which,
It wasn't an altercation.
No altercation, no kind of violent incident, but also, no accident, which it does rather narrow down the possible explanations.
Yes, because he was riding in France, we understand, not allowed to ride in public anymore on the King's orders,
and
unless he goes out the country.
Yeah, and I could well have, were it not for the information that is coming to us, I could well have believed that he might have fallen off a horse or something like that. But we are basically being steered away from that conclusion as being the predominant reason for that bruise. But I think what has got everybody talking about it is the position of it. The fact that it's on his face, on his kind of cheek and side of his face, in the place where you might get a knock. It doesn't look like the product of any kind of, him being attacked by somebody, but it is a very, very big bruise. I'm somebody who does martial arts as a hobby, and you don't get that kind of thing from getting a clap around the cheekbone. But yeah, I mean, the guidance we have is that it was a medical issue.
We talked about Harry's security and his fears, but Uncle Andrew feels that he is the one member of the royal family that's most at risk. I mean, I think he's probably got a point, hasn't he? There are an awful lot of people who may not wish him well.
Yeah, of course. And, some of the deaths around different characters associated with Epstein are quite dubious. Make of that what you will. I won't put my full tinfoil hat on here. But, Virginia Giuffre and even Jeffrey Epstein's death in general, people have questions. The internet, wants to think, and lots of other figures associated with him. The issue is, and I wouldn't be so cynical, if Andrew had not totally used and abused his power and neglected the security that was around him when he was special trade envoy, or when he was doing many things like allegedly bringing many women into Windsor Palace and other palaces across the country, people from Eastern Europe, people who could be compromised, using special code names, Mrs. Windsor, etc. I think it's very funny of him to come back and now say, oh, I'm worried about my security, when he didn't give a damn all those years ago and really treated security like they were his handlers and his servants and personal assistants. So I don't have any sympathy for him and his security at this point.
I think that if he was an ordinary person, because the whole point, he's supposed to be being treated like an ordinary person now and not given privileged special treatment for being a royal. If anything, the only reason the police would be helping him out would be to fill his room full of, electronic listening devices. He's under investigation by the police. They can't be protecting him.
But at Wood Farm, he is quite exposed, isn't he? He did have the offer at one stage of moving into Harry and Meghan's old residence,
which he could
Frogmore
simply have said,
Cottage, which was within the Ring of Steel on the Windsor estate.
All he had to do was say yes.
Frogmore, Wood Farm rather, is quite exposed.
So I'm sure that he could still go to Frogmore Cottage.
I doubt that. I don't think that offer will be open to him now. And of course,
they're now dividing it up too.
Andrew has denied all of the allegations around him, but nonetheless, because of that friendship with Jeffrey Epstein.
But also because he's under police investigation. Like, he's being investigated by the police for a really serious offence. And you cannot just say, well, okay, we're just going to give you back what is clearly a benefit. Many people are hated. Did Rolf Harris get police protection? Did all of those guys who were arrested under U-Tree get police protection? None of them did. They were despised. There were lots of people who probably would have wanted to do harm.
They weren't members of the royal family, though, would be his argument.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. He's created this situation for himself, and the whole point of stripping of him of his titles is supposed to be to establish the principle that you don't get special treatment purely for being royal if you are suspected of wrongdoing. You get police protection that comes with the role of being a working royal. And the reason Andrew is not a working royal is because he was forced out for behaving in a way that was completely morally indefensible. And you don't have to necessarily have proven Virginia's allegations to think that. We have him going on Emily Maitlis in 2019 on the BBC, said nothing to express sympathy on that during that recording for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and told us a pack of lies about why he went to see Epstein in 2010 after Epstein had already been convicted. And we now know much more about the truth even than we knew in 2019. But the seriousness of that crisis was big enough then that he was forced to give up his job as a working royal, and that loses you your kind of right to police protection.